Hey there, and welcome to Cinema Vina with Marcos Efron. On this episode, I have a very socially distanced chat with director Thor Freudenthal. Now, Thor isn't just a brilliant director who has the ability to put his stamp on everything he does, he also happens to be one of the nicest guys in the business. We go way back, and I'm really lucky to call him a friend. When I first met Thor, I remember seeing his short film and thinking, wow, this guy is good. I need to up my game. So it wasn't a surprise then that he got his first feature directing Hotel for Dogs for DreamWorks. After that, he directed Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters, and most recently, Words on Bathroom Walls. It just came out a few months ago, and in my opinion, I think it's his best work yet. Definitely see it if you haven't. It's streaming, and I put a link down below. In between those movies, Thor found time to direct a ton of great television, including episodes of Arrow, The Tick, Supergirl, The Expanse, and the pilot for Amazon Prime's fantasy series, Carnival Row, starring Cara Delevingne and Orlando Bloom. It's got to be one of the most original shows out there, and Thor is a big reason for that. So pour yourself a glass, come hang out with us while we drink some wine, talk about his journey from animation to live action, and discuss the technical challenges of shooting the opening sequence of Carnival Row. And of course, please subscribe, turn on notifications, like and comment down below. Thank you very much. Hey, Thor.
Hey, Marcos.
Well, I think we are being properly socially distanced here.
Yes, we are.
Thank you so much for doing this. You know, it's a pretty new show. We're having a lot of fun with it, and I'm very glad to have you on it.
Glad to be here.
Look, there's 1,000 ways that people become directors. Personally, I came in through music videos. You started out in animation. Talk to me about your pathway into directing. And was directing live action always the way you wanted to go?
Directing live action probably wasn't my end goal from the very beginning. I was always drawing. I was interested in art. My dad's a visual artist, and he introduced me to everything from abstract expressionism to cartoons. And I was always drawing. And at first I thought I was going to be a graphic novel artist, but then realized that probably was too solitary of a activity for me. I was really interested in animation because I could draw. And my art school in Berlin had an Oxberry camera, albeit no one to tell me how to use it. So I just kind of read some books and taught myself about moving characters on paper, and just made a couple of animated shorts myself. And that led to an exchange program, or being accepted via an exchange program to California Institute of the Arts, where they had a real animation program, one of the preeminent ones in the country. And I learned a lot there. Also, I learned that I probably wasn't going to be a very sort of committed animator, because I decided early on that I probably didn't want to be working for a big animation house where you really take years to work your way up from, back in the old days, it would be an in-betweener to a person where you would have some influence over the stories that are being told there. So I started working as a concept artist in visual effects over at Sony Pictures Imageworks, and then slowly worked my way into directing television commercials, which I did for a number of years, doing short films, and then being invited to the table of directing actual feature films. But it took a long time, and it also took a great deal of figuring out what I specifically wanted to do.
Well, just to be clear, when you're talking about these animation programs, you're referring to the programs at, let's say, Disney or Pixar, where you start off in a group of animators and you work your way up, right?
Yes, I mean it's a huge hierarchy with a incredibly talented and experienced brain trust at the very top. And then a lot of people who are just kind of supporting that and working in very important jobs, albeit probably ones that don't have a direct effect on the films or the stories and how they're being told. So I love animation, but probably in the end didn't love it as a medium quite enough to invest the time as many of my classmates did, and now have, beautiful careers at places like Pixar and Disney. I saw myself over time more in live action filmmaking.
Before we go any further, I think we both know that when two directors start talking shop, we tend to get a little bit long-winded. So let me go ahead and open this wine first.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers.
So we're going to talk about the pilot episode to Carnival Row that you directed for Amazon Prime. You know, it's got this kind of Victorian era quality to it. You know, it's a little bit seedy. And of course, there's this whole fantasy element to it. So when I was thinking about what we're going to drink, you know, I thought we needed some like a big red, powerful wine. And so I picked up this 2017 Liberté Cabernet Sauvignon. I know they say you're not supposed to judge a wine by its label or a book by its cover, but you know, I saw that label and something just kind of spoke to me that it was very evocative of the world that, you know, you created in Carnival Row. You know, it's seedy, it's kind of dangerous. I think the only thing that's missing from this drawing are fairy wings. Well, tell me, like, what do you think? I mean, is this worthy of Carnival Row? Is it big and bloody?
That it is. It's also kind of woodsy and rustic. It's got those overtones, which I think applies well to Carnival Row. It's funny that you mentioned the label because this drawing on it very much reminds me of Alphonse Mucha, who's one of the sort of preeminent artists of Art Nouveau from Prague. So you find this guy in every gift shop, and he was a great influence on me while I was there. So it's a funny kismet situation here with it.
Thor, you've been fortunate enough to have straddled both TV and film directing. Do you have a preference for one over the other? I mean, is there a difference in how you approach TV versus film directing?
I love both television and film for different reasons. In film, the director is the captain of the ship. You know, I have say on the script, on the cast, on how we make the movie, and I see it through until the very end. Meaning I negotiate the final cut with the studio or the producers and everyone involved. But I'm sort of the guardian of the movie throughout the process. In television, my role as a director is a little bit more collaborative, a little bit more narrowly defined. The overall sort of master of that domain is the showrunner. And he or she is in control of the script, has, you know, important things to say about the cast, and also will see the show through to the very end. My task as a director is really, you know, be involved in the casting, develop a visual language for the show, and figure out how to bring it to life and put it on its feet, and get the best performances from the actors. I really enjoy that, and I kind of enjoy this division of labor in a way. It comes with a level of relaxation that usually brings a lot of fun with it, because you're sharing the stage and the responsibility with a lot of other incredibly talented creatives. And I love being inspired by them and sometimes taking their lead, or sometimes, you know, bringing suggestions to the table for them. So I love it both for different reasons.
Okay, directing a pilot. I mean, you're there from the beginning, and like you were in Carnival Row, that opening sequence, it's super complex. There's a lot going on. There's visual effects, there's action, there's story, there's character and performance. How did you go about approaching breaking down something that complicated and big as the opening sequence of an entire series?
Yeah, the first thing I did was look at the pages of that sequence and determine who the center of the action is each time, meaning who the action pivots around, who's the POV that we're telling the story from. And that POV often shifts, which brings about a shift in story and introduces a new story point. So at first I wanted to just create the world and be in this strange land where we see dead fae hanging from the webbing or the netting that is crisscrossing above these woods, and then visually segue to this group of women who are running from what we don't yet know, but they seem to be running rather urgently. And I don't really introduce who they're running from until one of them, I think, turns her head, and we see gunshots piercing through the fog that we also created for that reason. And then I introduce the packed soldiers, which is the army that controls this particular domain. And right after that, it becomes about focusing on one particular woman, on one particular fae, who stumbles and falls, and then is about to be mauled by this creature who is tearing itself apart from the chain it's tied to and runs for her. All these shots are articulated from her point of view. And that leads me to introducing Vignette, played by Cara Delevingne, one of the lead characters of the show, who dives in and rescues that woman. And I wanted to give Vignette a grand entrance in the midst of this action. And I sort of determined that from that point forward, the sequence is really told from Vignette's point of view, all the way to the end. You know, will she make it or not, until she dives off the cliff and flies to freedom. Once I had these blocks of action sort of determined and who they're told from, whose perspective they're told from, I started to do one of my favorite things, which is sitting in my office, locked away, drawing little pictures, and just kind of, without filter, kind of riffing on what the visual possibilities of that sequence are. And I sit there and I draw and I change things and I throw things away. And once I'm done with that first pass of the storyboard in Chicken Scratch, I invite all of the other departments in. And that is my camera department, my stunt department, the practical effects, meaning the people who rig the movement on the day, and also the visual effects, you know, who need us to shoot things a certain way so that it's usable for them in post-production. So we all huddle over these storyboards and we all talk about the ins and outs, and things get really specific. Stunts will say, you know, I know you want her to do this movement. Can we do it like this maybe, because it'd be easier to rig? The camera department will say, well, that chasing behind these women in the woods would be best accomplished at that speed with a cable camera. And we talk about all the aspects of the sequence, and everybody has their input, which is really enjoyable because it makes my ideas oftentimes better. And then I go back and revise the plan and the storyboards, and ultimately the storyboards fall into the hands of my AD, in this case, the very excellent Nick Hextall-Smith, who created a couple of days of schedule based on these storyboards, and we just pick them off one by one. All this is preceded by rehearsals with Cara, so she knows the movement she has to accomplish. The beast was actually played by a guy in a gray suit, so she gets to rehearse taking him down with him. All these things are sort of, for the most part, figured out in advance, like a choreography, so we just have to basically film the dance on the day, and it is determined.
Okay, last question. For somebody who's watching this and they're thinking about becoming a director, what's the best piece of advice you can give them?
I think the most important thing is to find your own voice and cultivate that voice. Find a story that you personally want to tell, and then find a way to tell it by any means possible. I think what the industry is always looking for is a unique point of view. Not so much someone who's a worker who can plug into anything, but someone who brings themselves and their own unique perspective to things. That's, I think, more important than anything. So make a short film that has your fingerprints all over it, or write a screenplay and, you know, try to make that. Make something that is you, and don't be apologetic about it. That would be my advice.
You know, Thor, that's actually really good advice for up-and-coming filmmakers, but I think it's also good advice for working filmmakers to heed as well. Thor, I can't thank you enough for doing this.
My pleasure.
I think we got lucky with the light. I'm not so sure about the sound, but you know, until the next time.
Cheers. That was a good rehearsal.